Hello friends, it's Mallory with Made by Manny and Mal. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a glitter football split tumbler. Football season is right around the corner. It's my favorite time of year, so I love this tumbler and I hope you enjoy the tutorial as well. Everything I'm using will be linked in the description box below, so let's go! We are starting with a sanded and prepped 30-ounce skinny straight from Craft Haven, and our first step is to mark off our vertical halves of our cup. So I'm just estimating where the middle point is at the bottom and then bringing my painter's tape pieces up the edges and marking off my half and half that way. If you want to measure, you totally can. I usually just estimate and it comes out fine. So I taped off each side and then I took a little piece of blue painter's tape to put on the side I'm not working on so I don't get confused. We're going to paint this half of the cup with coffee brown from Montana Colors, and once that dries, we are going to glitter it brown. I make my own kind of custom mix of colors for the brown side of our cup. I use 5 different glitters, 3 different cuts of basically the same brown, and then I put in a little bit of copper just to give it a little bit more shine. Brown is kind of like black. It doesn't really shine too much under epoxy, so adding the copper makes it sparkle that much more. I would say this is like a 75-25 ratio, 75% brown, 25% copper. But what I did this time, I added a little bit too much copper, so I moved it into a bigger little jar and added more brown to even out the ratio. So now that our cup is dry, we're going to apply our glitter using the epoxy method. So I'm taking less than 1 milliliter of epoxy and spreading it on that half of the cup. And then we're just going in with our glitter, making sure we get really good coverage on this brown side, and that's about it. This is a mix of all different sizes of glitter, all different cuts, so we just really need to make sure that we have good coverage on this one layer and we should be good to go. We won't have to do 2 coats of glitter or go in and layer up other glitters because we mix them all together. Another option is to apply them all one by one if you don't want to mix them all together. I just think it's easier to mix them most of the time. I'm going to set this aside, let it dry for about 4 hours, and then I'm going to spray seal it with Rustoleum clear gloss spray paint. I'm going to do 2 coats of that, and once that is dried and our glitter is sealed on this brown side, I'm going to take some painter's tape and tape off that brown glittered side and just cover the middle with saran wrap because we're going to paint the other side using Meadow green from Rustoleum. This is going to be our field side. So once I've got that painted, I'm going to remove the saran wrap, but I'm going to keep the painter's tape on there because we're going to glitter this side as well. So I'm taking the epoxy method again, and this time for the green, we're just using 1 glitter. We're using Jaded from Peachy Olive Glitters. This is a fine cut, but it's really deep and like a really pretty rich green, and it's the perfect color for grass on cups. So once I've got it applied, I'm going to kind of tap it down, just make sure that it's on there. We've got enough coverage in that we tap off any excess. Basically, I had a little bit too much epoxy on this side, so I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get any streaking or running or anything like that. I'm immediately going to remove my tape, and then once that dries, I'm going to spray it with 2 more coats of the clear gloss spray. And then once that spray has dried, I'm going to go in with 40 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy and coat my cup. Our glitter is pretty well sealed, so I'm not worried about contaminating, but using that much epoxy allows me to not have to run my fingers too closely on the glitter. So after that coat cured, I did another coat of about 20 milliliters, and then when that cured, I went in and did some sanding. I cut all my decals also in the meantime. We've got quite a few decals going on. And after I did my sanding, I realized that my cup was not as smooth as I wanted it to be, so I ended up going in with an 80 grit sanding block, sanding all of it down, making it perfectly smooth, and then I did 1 more coat of epoxy just to make sure we had a perfectly smooth surface and that no bumps or lumps would show underneath those decals. So now that we are ready to apply our decals, our cup is totally smooth. I'm starting with the gold side striping. I'm using gold chrome vinyl from Expressions Vinyl, and I cut these stripes at 11.5 by 0.25 inches wide. So I'm just applying those on the seams of the cup. This is why I don't really worry about that stainless steel strip in between when I'm painting and glittering, because I know that this stripe is going to go there. So I'm not too worried about getting a perfect seam down the middle when I'm glittering. Once I've got those applied, I'm going to move into the football side of our cup, which is the brown side, of course. We're going to add the white decals to make that brown side look like a football. So we're starting with the top and bottom portions, and then we'll go back in later and apply the middle, like stitching seam part. So you could apply this without transfer tape. These are pretty big, blocky pieces. I just got these from Etsy. I will try to find the shop and link it below, but there are tons of files and they're pretty cheap too. So whatever you find for football stitching should work just fine. Once I've got that applied, I'm going to take my craft knife and run it along that gold side striping to cut off the excess of this white decal. I'm using the gold striping as kind of my guide, and I'm making sure that I cut right up against that edge. I don't want any overlap, but I also don't want any gapping in between the stripes. So take your time with cutting off the excess and be really, really careful. Make sure you cut as straight as possible and you don't make it look like a wonky football. I'm repeating the exact same process for the top stitching or leather part, and then we will move on to the other side of the cup and do all the field detailing. For the field side of our cup, we're adding the yard lines that you would see like on the side of a football field. This is probably the most difficult part to apply on this cup because there are so many tiny little pieces. So I like to apply part of it, kind of like how you would have like a vinyl wrap or a hinge method decal. We're peeling off part of the backing and we're using half of that decal to anchor down, and then we're going to slowly remove the backing as we push the rest of the decal onto the cup. We want to make sure that this is right up against that gold striping edge on our seam to make sure that we have enough room for our main decal, and we just want this to be perfectly straight and lined up. We don't want crooked yard lines or anything like that. So really take your time when you apply this decal and be careful. You don't want to lose any of those little pieces. We're repeating that exact same process on the other side. Make sure that your numbers are facing towards the field and not towards the gold side striping, because that's what it looks like on a real football field. For our decal, we're using this super cute It's Game Day Y'all decal. I offset it with the same gold chrome vinyl that we used for our side striping, and the regular decal is just white. I made this offset pretty thin because I just wanted it to kind of lift a little bit. I didn't want a huge border, and this decal is really big. It's going to touch our yard lines, so I wanted to make sure that it was going to fit, but it was going to make just the right amount of statement. So I'm pulling the backing off to make sure that everything is stuck to our transfer tape and that we're going to have a hassle-free application. And then I'm cutting off the excess backing from the sides so that we can apply our decal using the hinge method and make sure that it's perfectly centered. Like I said, this is a huge decal and it's going to fit perfectly in between those yard lines. It's going to almost touch the yard line. So we want to make sure that this is applied perfectly in the middle and that we don't have any of our decal overlapping our yard lines. Once I've got it positioned where I want it, I'm going to hinge it down and make sure that it is fully stuck down to the cup and pull back my transfer tape as carefully as possible. We didn't seal our yard lines or anything yet, so we want to make sure that when we're pulling back our transfer tape, we're not lifting any of those tiny numbers or tiny little pieces. We want to just make sure that it's set, that it stays where it's supposed to be, and we don't have any drama. Now that the grass side of our cup is done, we're going to go back to the football side and apply the middle stitching. You can definitely do this all at once. I just cut my middle stitching at the wrong size and had to go back and cut it again. So that's why. I'm applying this evenly right in the middle of those two leather stitching lines, making sure that it's centered. And once you've got that applied, we are officially done with all the decal work for this cup. I did not seal this with quick coat. Usually I would. I just decided not to. It ended up being fine. I just went straight into a coat of epoxy. I did about 30 milliliters, let it cure a full 12 hours before I moved on to the next step. So what we're doing next is taping off the bottom of our cup. This is how I always finish the bottom of my cups. You guys have seen me do this 1 trillion times. But I'm taking my electrical tape, taping off the bottom, and we're going to paint it using metallic gold from Rustoleum. We're going to make sure we wrap the full cup in saran wrap so we don't get any spray paint overspray. But once we've got that painted, we are going to glitter the bottom of this cup. We're taking Cleopatra from Peachy Olive Glitters, and we're going to add a cute little pop of gold glitter to the bottom. I'm using my Designer Dries Clear adhesive. I am really liking this. It is a hassle to put on, but it works great. The glitter stays in place and I don't need to do an extra coat of glitter, so it's worth it for me. I'm using this super tiny brush to apply to the bottom of my cup, and I'm just applying and kind of going over it until it feels tacky and until I've got a pretty solid base of that adhesive. And then I'm going in with my Cleopatra. This is a finer cut, so we're going to get pretty good coverage on the bottom. I don't like to use chunky glitters on the bottoms of my cups because they're just more hassle than they're worth, to be honest. Once I've got all the glitter on there, I am going to tap it down, just make sure it's really secured, and then immediately remove my tape and just go over the cup, get rid of any of that extra glitter that might have fallen onto the surface of the cup. Let this dry about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to spray it with a coat of clear gloss spray from Rustoleum, and then go in with another coat of epoxy. I'm taking about 20 milliliters of a little extra, and I'm going to seal that glitter portion first, and then make sure I don't have any like glitter specks on my glove, and then coat the rest of my cup using the rest of my epoxy. I let that coat cure about 6 to 8 hours, and then I moved into my final coat of epoxy, about 15 milliliters of a little extra epoxy. And once that was cured, we were all done. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for new videos every Tuesday and Saturday. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Okay, love you. Bye.